Saintly person has come to our home just to give his association to all of us. So, and thank you all for making today here. Prabhuji needs no introduction. He is a very famous writer and an author and speaker also. He is from Mumbai. His name is Chaitanya Charan Prabhu. He is disciple of Radhanath Swami Maharaj, and he has been traveling all over the world and giving lectures at corporate institutions like Intel, Microsoft, Google, Cambridge University, Stanford University. So he is a very well sought after speaker, and he is in great demand, and he has no time actually. Whenever I see him, he is writing, even while traveling on the car. So he is writing articles so fast, and he is answering questions to people. So nobody lets him sleep actually. Whole night he is actually counseling, answering questions, and he only gets his time to sleep while traveling sometimes. That's a power nap. So only for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and that's how they're working so hard to make this world spiritual, Krishna conscious. So Prabhuji is also very well known for his intellectual talks, and he is also the member of the Shastri Advisory Council of ISKCON, and he gives online classes, Bhakti Shastri classes. Some of you might have already been students for him. So he has been going all over the world last few years, at least I know. 10 years ago, I came in contact with Prabhuji through his Gita Daily article. So he writes a Gita Daily feature, which is a very unique one. Nobody writes an article on Gita on a daily basis. He has written more than 2,000 articles in the Bhagavad Gita, and each one is a masterpiece. So whenever I read his articles, I feel that Krishna is directly talking to me. So a particular need which I have of the day is fulfilled when I read his articles. And this has been on for last almost 8-10 years. He's been writing the article. And in the last 2 years, Prabhuji is in touch with me. Like I'm in touch with Prabhuji through words. Like I'm started hearing him. So now he's actually Krishna is speaking to me through Prabhuji's writings for the last 10 years. And the last 2 years, Krishna started speaking to me through his voice. And he was so merciful. So once I wrote to him about his article, and Prabhuji called me back. And since then, he has been thinking. And 2 years ago, he said, I'm coming to Delhi. I want to meet you. So that is my great good fortune. And since then, I have been in touch with Prabhuji. And today, so many people are waiting in this Delhi to have his association, and they are ready to arrange big programs for him. But Prabhuji said, no, I will spend some time with you. So I have called all of you because you are all very dear to me, and you have all supported me so much in the office, outside office, in the temple. So you all come from so many distant places. My god sister Nandapriya has come from Jammu actually to hear Prabhuji and have his association. And we are going to have a wonderful lecture today on a topic called Strung by the Tongue. And it is very relevant to all of us. So this is one of the stories inspired from the Ramayana. Prabhuji has recently written a book called Wisdom from the Ramayana. And he has written more than 20 books. All of them are just masterpieces. And in this book, he has taken 20 incidents, and he has explained. And this is one of these topics actually in that book, and that book is available for sale after the class. So we have limited copies. So it's a beautiful book. I've already started reading it, and it has inspired me like anything. And I have already booked some copies for myself. So there are 20 copies available, and that book cost you 250 rupees. So please take all these books today when you go. And Prabhuji will be very kind to sign autograph on those books. So I'll give it over to Prabhuji for the class.
ज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जलिशलाकाय चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामी इति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for coming today evening. And I have known that when devotees introduce, they tend to lovingly exaggerate. But I think Radha Damodar Prabhu's love exceeds the reality by infinite times. So don't take his introduction very seriously. I hope that after that introduction, the class won't be a disappointment for you. So, I'll speak on this topic of strung by the tongue. It is based on 17.15 in the Bhagavad Gita, which talks about austerity of speech. Anudvegakaram vakyam satyam priyahitam chayat swadhyayabhyasanam chaiva vanmayam tapa uchyate. So Krishna says, Anudvegakaram vakyam, speak in a way that does not do dvega towards others, does not cause agitation to others. Satyam, speak truthfully. Priya, speak that is in a way that is pleasing to others. Hitam, speak that is beneficial to others. Swadhyay abhyasanam chaiva, speak that which is according to scripture. Vanmayam tapa uchyate, vanmayam tapa, that this is austerity of speech. It's interesting. Van is speech, maya is full of. So this is that which is full of austerity, that is filled with or centered on speech. Tapa uchyate it is called. Normally we think of austerity in terms of, say, fasting. We may do some Ekadashi is there, Janmashtami is there. At that time austerity means we feel like eating, but we decide, I will not eat. So similarly, austerity of speaking means that we feel like doing something, but we regulate that according to discipline. And what are the broad guidelines for the discipline? Krishna is telling us in this. So the topic which I mentioned, strung by the tongue. What it means is that our tongue is a rope. And sometimes if a person is, in the past a person would be hung, then they would be hung by a rope. So they could be strung up by a rope and hung by a rope. So to be strung by a rope means to be existing in a state of suspension, helpless. And to be hung means to be killed. So strung by the tongue means our tongue can become like a rope which causes us, which keeps us in a state of suspension, which causes us misery, which can cause even destruction. The power of speech is often one of the most underestimated powers in society. Obviously, if somebody is fluent, we notice that. Somebody is very good at public speaking, we notice that. And we all may have a desire, say, I want to be a good speaker. And there are many public speaking courses which people may do. So in that sense, we do recognize that speech is a power. And if somebody can be a great speaker, hundreds and thousands of people come to their talks, then naturally that we recognize that power. But today I'm not going to talk in that sense of speech that can mesmerize and captivate hundreds of thousands of people. I'm going to talk of speech as it affects us in our day-to-day relationships. That this is where the speech has power to even break hearts. Speech has great power in relationships to wound or heal relationships. And I have been spending a good amount of time in America. So America, there's a great fear of people with guns rushing into crowded places, into schools, into theaters, and just going mad, rampage and shooting. In fact, several of my friends have told, even I was at a university lecture and suddenly an alarm went off. And then somebody screamed and everybody ducked under the desk. Duck under the desk. And they told me, duck under the desk. So what happened? There's a gunman in the campus. And then everybody ducked under the desk. And then some security officer came in. He opened the door, he looked in, and he walked away. And then after some time he came back and he said, this was just a test. Does everyone actually duck under or not? So there's no gun movement over there. But the point is, there's a lot of concern among people that when people have not just guns which can be used for self-defense, but almost like machine guns, automatic guns which can kill hundreds of people. They are available indiscriminately without much licensing or regulation, without considering the mental health of people. Now America also has history. The rest of the world can't understand. Why can't Americans regulate guns? No other country has as many deaths because of gun violence internally in the country. Many countries allow citizens to possess firearms, but America, it's very loose. And just regulate it. But there's a very powerful gun lobby that avoids it, that fights against it. And there is an emotional history behind it. When America was a colony like India under the British Empire, at that time one of the decisive battles was the Battle of Luxembourg. And Luxembourg was the place where the British had stored their gunpowder. And the rebels, the American revolutionaries, they were marching to Luxembourg, and the British were also marching to Luxembourg. So whoever would get to the guns first, you have guns but you need gunpowder, it's no use. Basically, whoever could arm their guns first, they would emerge victorious. And at that time, the citizens of Luxembourg and nearby counties, they formed a human wall, and they blocked the British army from reaching. And then the revolutionaries reached over there, and that was a decisive turning point. Because otherwise the revolutionaries were not large in number, they were scattered, they were not trained warriors. But the British army was much more organized, but somehow they won. So because that possession of gunpowder tilted the scale for Americans in the War of Independence, so America has that emotional attachment to the right to possess guns. So one of the sayings is that if we outlaw guns, then only outlaws will have guns. If a thief comes to your house and he's got a gun, what will you do if you don't have a gun? Now, it's true, but what happens is that, okay, there is a thief who may come and shoot us, but there is a wild person inside us also. That person may come and shoot for no reason, pick up a gun and shoot for no reason. So why I am talking about this is that although the power of a gun can be disastrous, and we may not have guns in our country, but all of us have something that can be equally dangerous, and that is the power of speech. Words don't go out like bullets. They don't physically lodge into the body and create holes in the body physically, but words can cause as much damage. The words can break hearts, words can shatter relationships. Words can cause families to fall apart. Words can cause friends to become enemies. And that's why it's important for us to learn to regulate the power of words. If we had a gun, we would be extremely careful about how we use it. Even if we had impulses, we would make sure that not keep the gun where it's easily accessible. Otherwise, we might just get angry at someone and pick up a gun and shoot them. What did I do? Many times these gunmen, after they shoot, some gunmen are very organized and they go and kill people in mass, very planned way, cold-blooded people. Some gunmen just get angry, they shoot someone, and then, what did I do? And then, not knowing how to face themselves after what they have done, just turn the gun and shoot themselves. So, it's just as if we had a gun, we would be extremely careful about how we would use it. Similarly, our own tongue, it can cause enormous damage. Now, of course, there's a big difference between a tongue and a gun. A gun, as I said, it shoots, it injures, it kills. A gun itself can't heal. But the power of speech is such that it can heal also. It can encourage. So the tongue is such a power by which we can have positive results in the outer world, we can have negative results in the outer world. And many times, whenever there are any relationships, and there are any relationship issues, there can be many different issues, and sometimes we may say actions speak louder than words. But that's not always true in relationships. If somebody has spoken harsh words, and then after that even we do 10 good actions, but still those words may be remembered more than the actions. Different people are different. Some people are ultra sensitive about words. And even if they want to, that word gets lodged into their memory and they just can't forget it. How dare you say like this to me? How could you even think like this about me? And that's why it becomes almost like an indelible mark on the memory. And that mark on the memory is not just an informational mark. It's an emotional wound. And then whenever we associate with that person, we might remember, oh, you spoke like that to me. You spoke like that to me. You spoke like that to me. And in some ways, we may envy somebody who can speak very fluently. And if we can't speak so fluently, we may feel, oh, I don't have such fluent speech. But actually, if we have fluency over speech and we don't have control over speech, it can be a deadly combination. Because we can fluently speak terrible words. And at least if we are not that fluent, then we are angry also. Like some people, when they become angry, they are so angry that they just can't speak anything. They become incoherent. But some people, they become angry and all the resentment, negativity, anger that is there, it comes out in such hurtful, fluent words. That, it's like we are sitting in our house and suddenly a dam breaks. And the dam floods our house, we are sitting at one place and suddenly we are knocked out. And is propelled away in the flood. So like that, at one moment we are sitting peacefully and suddenly this person launches a tirade against us. What happened? And many times we speak and then afterwards, hey, I didn't mean to say that. Call it a slip of the tongue. How many of us have this experience? Slip of the tongue? Slip of the tongue, yes. So we all have this experience, and the more public the occasion, the more people who are hearing, the more embarrassing it can be. Now we say, it's an interesting word, uses slip of the tongue. What do we mean by slip of the tongue? Say like if you are walking and we slip, then we stumble, we may fall down, but basically we become imbalanced. So like that when we are speaking, and there's a slip of the tongue, that means we are speaking in one way, but suddenly something else comes out. Now, most people speak to express their thoughts. But some people speak to discover their thoughts. They speak first and speak later. Hey, I didn't mean to say that. So, that when they sometimes some people speak something, and then after they speak that, the other person is surprised by what this person spoke, but they are themselves that surprised. Like, how did I speak this? So what happens? Sometimes the tongue seems to be working on its own, as if the tongue is disconnected from the brain. And the tongue seems to be like on a autopilot mode. When the tongue goes like this on autopilot mode, sometimes we don't even understand what we are speaking, and we can cause a lot of damage. So when Krishna is telling here, Vanmayam tapa uchyate, that regulate the power of speaking. Actually, one broad aspect of regulating is, we all learn how to speak. Nowadays, most people are striving for literacy, they can even write. But every human being learns language. We all learn to speak. But one aspect of learning to speak is learning when not to speak. Learning when not to speak. And that is not a skill which many people learn. There are times when a strategic silence is the best policy. Yes, I can speak, but whatever I speak, it will get me into trouble. So sometimes some people put us in trick situations also. There are trick questions which people ask. So one common example of a trick question is, you ask a man, have you stopped beating your wife? There is no right answer to this. If you say no, it means you are still beating your wife. What a shameless person. If you say yes, that means you admitted you are beating your wife before. So whichever answer you give, it's a trap. So actually some questions, it's best not to answer them, or we cannot answer in the terms that the question is framed. You change the terms. Who told you that I beat my wife? Isn't it? So you presented a pseudo set of options, and then if we are on autopilot, then we just walk within those options. And that can get us into trouble. So basically, I'm going to talk about in these three parts. First part I talked about is how dangerous speech can be. And then one aspect of learning to speak is learning when not to speak. In the Mahabharata, before the Kurukshetra war, the Duryodhana is so arrogant and so confident, so foolishly confident, I am going to win the war. He feels as if the war is not going to be a match also. I have got 11 Akshahunis, I have got Bhishma and Drona and Karna. These Pandavas, it will not be a match also. It's like, say, if say India is very good in cricket and some team like Holland, they're having a match. They say these are minnows. They can't even, they will be no match to us. So he thought it would be like that. And so, before the Kurukshetra war, the previous night, he sent Uluka was the son of Shakuni. And he sent him with a message. And the whole message, he told Uluka had this capacity to remember what was spoken. He says, you remember this and you repeat it. And the whole message was all meant to provoke the Pandavas. He says, Bhima, you think you're very powerful? But I reduced you to the position of a woman cooking in the kitchen. This happened when he was in the Jnatvas, in the incognito exile. He says, Arjun, you think you are a great warrior? I reduced you to eunuch. And like that he insults every one of them. Now, when Uluka goes over there, he is super scared. Suppose we have to give some message. We have to repeat some words. And there are words that are going to make that person very angry. So first he will say, these are not my words. Don't get angry with me. These are not my words. So Uluka says, oh Yudhishthir, please remember the codes of war, that if a messenger gives any message, the messenger should never be punished. So Yudhishthir said, don't worry, whatever the message tell. But then when he starts telling, the whole Kaurava camp is in Pandava camp is in uproar. And he taunts everyone. And his idea is that when they are taunted like this, then we will have some kind of fight. And all the Pandavas get so angry and they pick up their weapons and they're just blazing with anger. And Arjuna tells Uluka, he says that Duryodhana, tell him, you have spoken your words, tomorrow my arrows will speak to you. And eventually, by that action, he just shows that he has no interest in any kind of reconciliation. If fire is burning, a wise person will try to extinguish the fire. But what Duryodhana did was, he put more fuel in the fire, more fuel in the fire. And Duryodhana is a classic example of how not to use the power of speech. There was a Kaurav, he had already done terribly wrong things against the Pandavas. But on top of that, he had also done terribly wrong thing to Krishna by trying to arrest Krishna. And that is like, say, if there is a conflict between India and Pakistan, normally, say, the Indian Defence Secretary and the Pakistan Defence Secretary might meet if you want to have some peace. But suppose the Indian Prime Minister goes as the peace envoy, as to seek peace, that means there's very serious intent for seeking peace. And suppose the Indian Prime Minister goes to Islamabad and Pakistan tries to arrest the Indian Prime Minister over there. It will consider to be a national outrage and war will break out over there. So that's what Duryodhana had already done when he had tried to arrest Krishna. But on top of that, what did he do? He now provoked the Pandavas further. And by that, already the war had become inevitable. But at least the bitter feelings in the war could have been minimized. But by evoking all the bitter feelings, it just made things completely irreconcilable. Now, why would he do something like this? As I said, he felt that this is not going to be a match at all. At least we'll have some fun, we'll have some fight. But he grossly overestimated his power. As one by one, all the generals fell, he had to bite his words. He had to be crushed, humiliated and destroyed. Pandava's intention was not to humiliate him, but that's what his arrogance led to. So now when I'm talking here about, I first talked about how uncontrolled, in an uncontrolled way, in an unthinking way, we might speak harshly. But this example I am giving, how intentionally we might speak harshly. Sometimes we are so angry with someone, like if somebody has spoken something to us, then we actually mentally planning. Next time when I see this person, I'll speak this, I'll speak this, I'll speak this, I'll speak this, I'll speak this. Sometimes somebody speaks some kind of put down to us, speaks something minimizing, something insulting. And then we don't have the presence of mind to speak something back. Then the mind goes on a revenge fantasy. Next time when I see this person, I'll speak this, I'll speak this, I'll speak this, I'll speak this. So there, so there can be some destructive speech which is hot-blooded, and there can be some destructive speech that is cold-blooded. Hot-blooded means just in the rush of the moment, we speak wrongly. But cold-blooded, destructive speech is even more dangerous. When somebody is planned and spoken. Now sometimes it might be useful. Say sarcasm is where somebody speaks in a way that is biting to convey some point. Now, sarcasm in cartoons or stand-up comedies or something like that is good. But sarcasm in close relationships is not at all good. It can be very alienating. So there are times when we laugh with people, and there are times when we laugh at people. So laugh with people means as it's all a joke and we are laughing together. So maybe there's some politician over there and we all laugh with them. So okay, that might be okay. But when we laugh at people, that means we make somebody who is near us physically and emotionally, we make them the target of our sarcasm. And that is very painful. So those words are like not just arrows, but we could say they are poison-tinged arrows. The arrow itself pierces and hurts, but imagine if in front of the arrow there is poison. The poison permeates into the body. That hurts even more. So, how do we deal with this tendency? We all have this urge to speak, and when anger comes up, when we feel an overwhelming urge to speak. So we could say Duryodhana is an example of somebody who was eventually strung by the tongue. He fell down and he was humiliated and he was defeated, destroyed. Sita in the Ramayana is an example of somebody who spoke harshly but unintentionally. We see that when Ram was chasing Maricha, and at that time Maricha imitated Ram's voice and called out, "Hey Lakshman, hey Sita." And then Sita became frantic with worry. She told Ram, please. She told Lakshman, please go and help Ram. So Lakshman said, Ram cannot be in any danger. No demon can put Ram in danger. Because Sita was so frantic with worry, she somehow wanted to push Lakshman to go. She said, now I understand why you are not going. He says, all along you were planning that you had an evil eye on me. You are just waiting for an opportunity. Now if Ram is out of the way, then you will have your way with me. He says, I was shrieking. He said, I will die, but I will not be touched by you. And Lakshman was aghast to hear such an accusation. And he folded his hands. He says, oh, Sita, you don't know what you are speaking. But still, the words you are speaking are so unbearable that I cannot tolerate them anymore. I am going to leave. I know because if I leave, I know when I leave, disaster will befall you. But still, I cannot stay over here. And he departed from there. And then, Ravan sneaked in over there and he abducted Sita. But the point here is that eventually, when Ram, Lakshman, Sita were all reunited, Lakshman never held it against Sita. He never reminded her at that time, you spoke like this to me. There are certain things you have spoken in tension. Now here I am going to the third point, that the first point was how we may speak unintentionally, something harsh. Sometimes we may speak in a cold-blooded, calculated way.